Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Raven, who is also Brooke, and in today's video, I will be talking about the curious case of Blueface. Now, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and to follow me on all my social media platforms, and remember that this is my opinion.
That's my opinion!
Remember to keep it respectful in the comments, and let's just get right into the video. So Blueface's real name is Jonathan Porter, and he was born January 20th, 1997, and his parents are Karlissa and Jonathan Porter Sr., and he also has a sister named Callie. Now, in his childhood, he lived in the Santa Clarita area in California, and then in Oakland a little bit with his dad, and he told the New York Times his mom actually moved to Ohio to pursue acting, and then she would put him into commercial auditions, and he really didn't find joy in doing that. Now, while he was in high school, he attended 5 different high schools because he was a football player and he was trying to find the best opportunity anywhere at any school that he could find. And also, while in high school, that is when he met the future mother of 2 of his kids, Jaden Alexis. Now, he did end up getting a football scholarship to Fayetteville State College, which is in North Carolina, but he left school in 2016. And he says that during that time, Jaden was mostly working while he was at home taking care of their son. And he also tried to be a barber at this time while he was in California. He even had an Instagram page, and it was called The Fade Room. And I'm not gonna lie, that's actually pretty clever. I'm not gonna lie. Now, Blueface is famously known for being a Crip, hence the name Blueface. Now, in a recent interview that he did with DJ Vlad, he was already affiliated with the Schoolyard Crips because his cousins were a part of that same gang. He said he got jumped by 4 people into the gang and the rest was history. So according to Complex.com in an article that they did with Blueface back in 2019, this is how he describes how his rap career got started. I walked into this literally. That's how Blueface describes the beginning of his rap career. According to him, per several radio interviews, he was hanging out with an LA rapper named TC 4800. He drove TC to one of his shows, and TC left his iPhone dongle in Blueface's car. Blueface returned the dongle to TC, who was at a studio, but before leaving, he hopped in the booth. His now well-known ad-libs, Blueface Baby and Yeah I, were born that day, and it was a wrap from there. And going back to that same interview that I mentioned earlier that he did with DJ Vlad this year, he had 3 names in mind when he was coming up with a stage name. One of them was C-Note, another one was De Niro, and then the third one was Blueface, and obviously he went with Blueface. He said he chose Blueface because at the time, and still to this day, he loves money, and also at that time, money was starting to become blue. He released his first song on SoundCloud in 2018 titled Dead Locks. And that was his breakthrough single as far as him just trying to generate buzz around his name. And then in that same year, in June 2018, he released his first full mixtape, Famous Crip. And there is a particular song on there called Put It in Her Face, which refers to his... And this is how Complex says how that song came about. Somebody on Instagram commented that he wore fake chains, so he took a shower, a golden shower in his words, but he really didn't mean that with all of his jewelry on. He even brushed his teeth with his grill in. Blueface recorded and uploaded all of this to his IG story, but he didn't notice the unfortunate camera angle. Somebody got this perfect ass angle screenshot of blank blank looking hurt, looking like I'm finna lose it all. Instead of letting the internet shame him into oblivion, he decided to flip the script. If I'm going to go out with a pic, it's going to be a good one, so I had to put it in her face. And then in December of 2018, that is when he signed a distribution deal for that same mixtape, Famous Crip, with Entertainment One Records. And according to Nielsen Music, the label's president of urban music said that the single Tatiana was going to be the biggest single that he ever worked on since Bone Thugs and Harmony's most infamous single, Crossroads. And then in 2019, that is when Tatiana came out and just took the world by storm. Blueface began to take the world by storm. The song peaked at number 9 and even got a remix featuring Cardi B. And then what made this song even more famous is that there is a dance that went with it that Blueface will always do when he would perform the song. And I distinctly remember when this song came out because I remember doing the dance. I was a freshman in college in 2019, and every time they played that song at parties, everyone would do, that dance, or he's like basically dry humping the air. And then at this time, that's when he began to be managed, and is still managed by Wack 100, who is a record executive and was in charge of Cash Money West, where Blueface is also still signed to this day. And also Wack 100 was a co-founder of Cash Money West as well. And then after the success of Tatiana, Blueface just began to be sought out by many celebrities. Drake even DM'd him and offered to do a collab with him. He worked with people like Quavo, Lil Uzi Vert, and even apparently E40 reached out to him and wanted to do a collab, and E40 is a legend in the West Coast. And also Ice Cube was doing a reaction video to different West Coast artists, and when they played a Blueface song, Respect My Crippin', that is when Ice Cube said, "I like his confidence. I definitely know this dude can rap. He's not offbeat. He's not all the way hitting the ones all the time. He's falling off and falling back on. It is one of those styles that's an acquired taste, but when you get it, it's fire." And also when Kendrick Lamar was asked about him, he said he's dope and he has his own style and he respects that. Now, one thing that Blueface was also famously known for with his music is how it appeared to be that he would be rapping off beat. And according to Complex, here's what Blueface said when he was asked about the criticism of him allegedly rapping off beat. He said, "I usually write to the beat," he said to No Jumper. "Really, the beat can make the song itself. Whether you think I'm off beat, I made the song to the beat, or at least that's what I was hearing." He also had other songs come out that are still pretty prominent after Tatiana, including Moonwalking and Calabasas featuring DDG, Bleeded, Outside, Better Days, and more. Now, when I go into this next part talking about the curious case of Blueface, the reason why I included it in the peak of his fame is because I really do think that his love life plays such a big, I would say 95% of the reason why I think Blueface is so infamous today and why he's so talked about today is because of his love life and the roller coaster that the public has been seeing for almost 4 years now, really. And even I would personally say that he is more known for his toxic love life than he is for his own music. Like, of course, people know him for Tatiana, but I really do feel like a big reason that people know him is because of his toxic love life. And also something interesting is something that he said in December of 2018 that Complex also talks about is when he was asked about his love life, he literally said that he's single and he doesn't think that he's a relationship type. And he even made a comment about how he should probably stop sleeping with fans. So let's just get into the peak of Blueface's fame. So what I really think began to expose people to how toxic of a person Blueface could be when it comes to his relationships with women is when he did Blueface Club back in 2020 of October, and that is when the first season came out, and that is also when the world was introduced to Chrisean rock. So Blueface Club was basically a parody of Oxygen's Bad Girls Club, which everyone knows. And it followed 10 women with 18 episodes and followed them for 21 days. And on the show, they mainly just fought and drank and hung out with Blueface trying to get his attention. And mainly a lot of them went on the show to promote their social media platforms more. And according to Business Insider, who did a very in-depth, basically investigative article about Blueface Club, and they talked to a lot of contestants who were on the show, people who were part of the production of the show. So when I'm making references to Blueface Club and I talk about key points that happened during Blueface Club, I am referring to this Business Insider article. So one thing that this article pointed out was, at one point, there were 4,000 users signed up to Porter's account, and they would have paid between $30 and $50 per month for the content. The episodes are posted sporadically from the beginning of October to the end of November, and based on those figures, the subscription fees would have racked up between $100,000 and $200,000 per month, but the contestants who spoke with insiders said that they saw none of it. And then that goes back to how when they went on the show, it was meant to promote their social media accounts, and they really weren't meant to be paid on the show. They were basically on that show for exposure. And also, mind you, none of the contestants were giving Kovisha tests, and mind you, it was October of 2020 when Kovisha literally started, and they were not giving COVID tests. They were probably drinking off each other at this house, probably doing stuff with Blueface in this house, and Kovisha could have been spreading. And that's not even just gross, that's just dead ass negligent, and a lot of things could have went wrong with that. And also, there was a second season of Blueface Club, but it just wasn't as popular as the first season, and no one really talks about it at all. Now, I'm going to get into some key points that this Business Insider article talked about when it came to Blueface Club. And again, they talked to contestants on this show, and they talked to people who were part of production before the show was, beginning to go into production, and people that were just, again, a part of it during the filming of the show. So a contestant named Storm, real name Kayla Stinson, said that security and men were just allowed to walk anywhere in the house, including in the girls' rooms. Because again, like that's a not only such a big ass liability, but anything could have went wrong in that situation for not giving rules to security to give privacy to these girls in this house. And also the rooms for the girls did not even lock. So again, security could have just went in while they were sleeping, while they were changing, and that's just again very negligent. There wasn't much food in the house. They mostly ate Domino's and ramen noodles, and they mostly just drank. So imagine like you're drinking on an empty stomach. Of course, you're going to be grumpy, hangry, you want to fight people. Like all you're eating is freaking pizza and some ramen noodles. Excuse me? They had their phones taken away, and there was no medical or psychological support during production, after, or before. And to be honest, it's all just alleged. But based on all the things I have read in this Business Insider article, I would be really surprised if they even did a background check on anyone that was even allowed in the house, including security. Someone broke their leg while trying to break up a fight, and then everyone knows that that is when Chrisean famously lost her tooth when she was getting into it with Jaden Alexis, who again is the mother of Blueface's son at that time, and then that is when their beef began. And also contestants said that security was very unprofessional and even was instigating and trying to start fights between the girls. And also when they first got there weren't enough beds for all the girls. Originally it's only supposed to be 8 of them, but then it became 10 of them. And then since there weren't enough beds, they were fighting for the beds. And also something that was very uncomfortable to read and have to learn about. Let me just read it. Other than brawling and prompts to meet each other in the boxing ring, the women said there was no real structure or narrative to what they did. One minute they were trying out toys on each other in their underwear. The next they were taking a trip to the park to feed the ducks. They walked around in lingerie, twerked, and vied for the camera's attention. I want you to point out in the comments what the hell made you uncomfortable in what I just read, and let's see if we're here. And also the girl said there was a lot of special treatment in the house, especially to Chrisean, because according to Blueface, she was bringing in a lot of subscriptions. So if you were someone that was causing enough drama to drive in the money, Blueface would give you special treatment. And then I'm going to go into Blueface's and Chrisean's relationship in a minute, but I'm not doing like a deep dive into I'm just not. But I do think that the reason that Blueface kept Chrisean around is because she was just making him money, period. And someone from Crispy Productions, who also helped with production with Blueface Club, also said, I think he thought it was going to be nice, smooth sailing with these girls, but they started breaking stuff. The house is getting dirty really fast. Like, these girls are no joke. They were not regular girls. The representative who pulled his company out of the production 2 weeks into the show said Porter also didn't plan enough to keep the contestants occupied. He said Porter stopped taking the women out anywhere because they would fight everywhere, usually under the influence of alcohol. And also another thing that was said in this Business Insider article that's interesting is, without traditional media backing, Porter and his team cut corners. One of the producers and 4 of the contestants said, rather than bringing on a massive crew and backstage hands, Porter asked his cousin and his managers, Whack 100 and Bravo, to help him out as security and hire a handful of small production companies to capture the footage. So basically, when you look at Blueface Club, it was no type of organization. It was a lot of negligence going on. He didn't have reputable security company acting as security. He had his cousins and his manager acting as security, and they probably don't really care what's happening in the show as long as they're making money while being a part of the show. And again, like, based on what I have just talked about, there are just, again, a lot of things that could have went wrong with this Blueface Club show. But then that is when you go into the toxic ass relationship of him and Chrisean, which I think also plays a big part into the rise of his fame and the peak of his fame. So after the show ended in 2020 and then in 2021, there's a lot of speculation that him and Chrisean were a couple, but they never confirmed anything. But then in 2022, him and Chrisean did confirm that they were together. Again, I'm not doing a deep dive into their relationship because I know people are tired of hearing about them and just hearing about their shenanigans. So I'm just going to be talking about little key points, significant things that happened in their relationship. I'm not going that deep into it. So at that time, that is where Chrisean also signed to Blueface's label. And at that time, I can't find what the exact label name was, but I do know that now that label is named MILF Music. So now I'm going to get into him and Chrisean's relationship timeline, and I am going to be looking down because it is a lot to try to memorize, and I don't really have time for that. So I apologize now. So in February 2022, she stole his car. We're in Oklahoma. She was also arrested for drug possession, and she also allegedly wrote "I love blue" in her own in his house. In May 2022, it was alleged that she fought Blueface's mom. And then in August 2022, that's when she allegedly punched Blueface while they were in Arizona. And then in September 22, that's when the footage surfaced on TMZ of Blueface and Chrisean fighting. And then in September 2022, that's when TMZ obtained footage of Blueface fighting Chrisean's dad. And then October 2022, Chrisean accused Blueface of DV, but then took the claim back a day later, saying that she was intoxicated and he was trying to save her from hurting herself. And then in December of 2022, that is when their show on Zeus Network, Crazy in Love, premiered. And then that show just further exposed their very toxic relationship.
Everybody getting fucked 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, I went to jail. 2 weeks ago, I had a ball spot. 2 weeks ago.
You've been to jail 10 times. What are you talking about? You're a fucking criminal. Not again.
Fucking with you.
And then in January of 2023, that's when she found out that she was pregnant with Blueface's child. And then throughout Chrisean's whole pregnancy, they kept having a back and forth as to whether or not he was the father of Chrisean's child. And then in September of 2023, that's when Chrisean welcomed their child, Chrisean Jr. And Blueface was not present for the birth. And then when she gave birth, that is when Blueface began to complain about her parenting style. And he said he was interested in filing for full custody and that he also did not like the name choice. And then in October of 2023, Blueface proposed to Jaden, and Chrisean expressed her opinions about saying that she thought that it was a publicity stunt. And then in December of 2023, Blueface alleged that he took a paternity test saying that he was not the father of Chrisean's baby. And then in January of 2024, and that is when Chrisean got his face tattooed on her cheek, which she now is trying to get permanently removed. And then while he was in jail, I guess you can say their dynamic relationship, situationship, whatever you want to call it, was as calm can be. And then once Blueface got out of prison, that is when we saw Chrisean with him and with Chrisean Jr. and with Jaden Alexis and the kids that she had with Blueface. Also, I forgot to mention that Blueface and Jaden also ended up having another child together, a daughter. And then that is when Chrisean and Jaden and Blueface kind of started to get into it because Jaden did not want Chrisean around her kids. And now when you look at present day, Blueface says that he is done with Jaden and Chrisean and he wants nothing to do with them romantically. And also again, Chrisean is trying to get all tattoos that remind her of Blueface off of her body right now. And when it comes to the paternity of Chrisean's son, Chrisean Jr., one day one person is saying that Blueface is not the father, and then another day Blueface is the father, and then you'll see Blueface with the child. So no one knows just concretely that Blueface is the father of this child, but he is around this child, so people just say that he is the father of this child, like I'm saying. So another thing that I feel like Blueface is also known for is the very public, toxic, weird relationship that he has with his mom, Karlissa. So in 2019, he famously broadcasted him kicking his mom and sister out of his house, and then his mom made an allegation that he was pimping out Chrisean. And then in early 2023, this is what Blueface had to say about his mom. F that lady, he said. I don't have a mom. She's weird. She's strange. I don't know what her motive is, her angle. I don't know what she's trying to accomplish with her outreaches and whatever she does. I really don't care for her. She's not in my best interest, so what can I do with that? And then his mom responded by saying, this ninja said F everyone but the people who are leeching off him. You are the world's biggest weirdo. When they're done with you, I pray you ask God for forgiveness. He doesn't have a dad. He doesn't have a baby mama. He doesn't have a brother. He doesn't have a sister. He doesn't have a granny. He doesn't have a friend. He doesn't have God. And then his mom made very weird, uncomfortable comments about his saying that her boyfriend's was bigger than Blueface's. With excuse me? And it did seem like that while he was in jail, they did have some communication, because also when he got out, she was there with his kids that he has with Jaden, greeting him as he's getting let out of prison. And then recently, Blueface made this tweet about his mom. Mom, we can never have sex. I'm not into that. Please stop being so invested in the women I'm laying down with. It's kind of weird, like you're jealous or something. We can never lay down together. You're not my type. No comment. Also, something very concerning that Blueface did is that about 2 years ago in late 2023, he recorded himself with his son and with Jaden all in their house. And I believe that their daughter was there too, where there were strippers in his house while his kids were there. And then while his child was like in a pantry just trying to get some snacks, Blueface went to him and was like, "Are you gay? Because why aren't you out there looking at the strippers?" And that's just actually insane and just so predatory, so negligent, just so many things wrong about that situation. And I'm not sure if I'm going to show it because I don't want to put their child's face, on my channel. I don't believe that you should be putting children even on social media, especially in that context. But that did happen, and it was reported that CPS was called because of that situation. Now let's get into the downfall of Blueface, I should say, and his arrest, which go hand in hand together, I guess you could say. And again, I'm going to be reading from my laptop looking down because it's a lot to remember. In 2018, he got into a shooting with someone who was suspected to have tried to rob him, and he was arrested on suspicion of assault with a deadly weapon. And then in 2019, he was charged with one felony count of carrying a loaded handgun without registration, but the charges were dropped in October of that year. And then in 2021, on September 12th, it was reported by TMZ that Blueface and two other men were arrested for assaulting a bouncer at a club in LA. And it was reported that this whole fight even started because Blueface was trying to get into the club with no ID, and the bouncer said, "I need to see ID." Blueface is like, "I'm famous, you should know who I am." The bouncer is like, "I don't care, let me see some ID." And then that's when Blueface and his little entourage began to then attack the bouncer. And it's also allegedly reported that one of those people that was with Blueface also stole his chain, and then Blueface was also arrested for that incident on felony assault. And then in 2022, this is when Blueface is arrested for an incident that happened in October of that year. And here's what happened. Blueface was arrested in November 22 after the shooting incident, which again was in that month before in October, according to Las Vegas Sun, which said that the 25-year-old rapper got into a fight with the victim, Kentavious Trailer, after Trailer cracked a joke about him as he talked to women in a cheap vehicle outside Euphoric Gentlemen's Club on a windy road. Trailer says Blueface's entourage attacked him, which surveillance video corroborated. When he tried to escape in his truck, Blueface pulled a gun and fired at least 2 shots at it. He was booked into the Clark County Detention Center for attempted murder with a deadly weapon and discharging a firearm at or into an occupied vehicle on November 16th. Blueface pled guilty to charges of battery and discharging a firearm at or into an occupied structure on July 3rd this year in exchange for the suspended sentence. And he was sentenced to 3 years of probation, and if he violated probation, he would be sentenced to 2 to 5 years in prison. And then that is when in January of 2024, he was arrested for violating probation from this 2022. And then in August of 2024, that is when he was sentenced to 2 years in prison, but he actually ended up getting out in about a year in this year of November, and that leads to where we are now with Blueface. Now, after Blueface got out of prison, a lot of people were taken aback because Blueface always had face tattoos, but when he got out of prison, he had a lot of face tattoos, including like a Walgreens symbol on his face. And it seems like the career that he appears to be focusing on a lot is being on stream a lot. I haven't really heard him talk about putting out music at all, but you really have seen him streaming with himself, with Jaden, with DDG. He recently just did a stream with Keke Palmer and did a song with her while on stream. And again, like I said earlier, he claims that he is done having any romantic dealings with Jaden or Chrisean. He even accused Jaden of wasting, I guess, the $90K that he gave her when he got out of prison. And I'm not gonna lie, it's like when you have 2 kids, I understand that people are like, "Oh, she should have flipped it, invested it, started a business, just anything to make you long-term money." But also, I'm just imagining having 2 kids and having $90K. I just wouldn't expect that to last a lifetime. So what do I know? Also, it appears that he has 2 girlfriends, probably more. Also, once Blueface was released from prison, he went on to date quote-unquote Hazel E. and that ended as quickly as it started.
I'm officially letting Hazel go from the roster. Hazel E, you are too old to be acting this young. We're done. Dead on it. We're done. I'd rather be with a young bitch, you feel me? Dead on it.
But one of the girlfriends has been in the media a lot because one, she got his name tattooed under her chin area, like right under her chin area. And you know, I'm kind of like, at least it's like under your chin, because like, you know, if someone, I guess, it's easily not noticeable. And it's like, you know, when you're ready to get it off, you know, it's just in an area where again you can just get some makeup and easily cover it. It's just not stamped on your face, you know. And also recently they got into it with each other while on the stream when he was trying to press her in front of thousands of people as far as how many rappers she has slept with. And you know, when you look at it all and when it comes to the curious case of Blueface, I feel like what we can all learn is that sometimes all money just is not good money. I feel like this is a lesson that we learn from pretty much every curious case that I've done on my channel, is that all money is not good money. And I really do think that if Blueface kind of just kept trying to make himself more known for his music rather than his love life, it may be an easier transition for him to get back into music now that he's out of prison. And also I think people will begin to take his music seriously, because I mean this with no disrespect, but I feel like with Tatiana, yes, people were co-signing him and a lot of artists were rallying around him, but when it came to the general public, he was kind of looked at as a joke because he did rap off beat and because there were antics surrounding him with his love life. And I feel like if he just kept going at music, kept polishing himself a little bit more, we could know him more for that. And I feel like knowing him for music is definitely worth more longevity than knowing him for his toxic life with his relationships with women and the relationships that he has with his family. Because also I forgot to mention that Chrisean also fought his mom and his sister. And also again, I know people are tired of hearing about him and Chrisean's relationship, that toxic ass mess. But hear me out, right? I feel like a lot of people could learn from that. I feel like people can learn to just leave people alone who they are not good for, and to not just let things get worse and worse and worse until shit basically hits the fan. And it does appear like sometimes when you hear Blueface talk, he appears to actually be an intelligent person. What I feel like to me makes him such a curious case is that he's not using that intelligence to again further his music career. He could honestly start his own label in an ethical way. He could possibly have a TV show. If he wanted to do a Blueface Club, he could do it, but just let it be ethical. Let it not have so much negligence to it. Actually try to put some thought into it. Let it be something of a little bit of substance. I know it's not going to be a lot, but just give us something. But just don't put people in such a compromising position where women are uncomfortable and men seem to just be doing whatever they want to. You're making them do these outlandish, weird, very let's pause because you're looking like a very creepy ass person right now type of activities. Actually pay them. Like if Blueface actually uses intelligence, he could do something for himself with longevity. And again, I think that's just what makes him such a curious case. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I would love to hear you guys' opinions in the comments. Remember to keep it respectful. And remember to always keep life cute, fab, and fun. And I will see you guys in the next video.